I ran into Gary's cousin Sarah, who lived in St. Louis, where I lived. One day in an email, I said to her, you know, I don't think I'm 50 years old. I don't think I'm going to find anybody to marry again. And she said, you know, there's one person I think you would really like, my cousin Gary. So if you're ever coming out to California, to San Francisco, then you can meet him. And I said, well, oddly enough, I bought tickets to go to San Francisco on September 4th, which was months away. And she said, September 4th? That's Gary's birthday. So we decided that's when I would meet him. Then I sent him an email just because I thought I better let him know I'm showing up at this party. And I didn't know what to say, so I said, here's a poem that I wrote. My name's Nancy, and I'm looking forward to meeting you.
And I really wasn't sure how to answer the email, so I looked up Nancy's phone number in St. Louis and called her. And we must have talked for 2 or 3 hours that first time. And we just kept talking and emailing. And by the end of the second day, beginning of the third day, we decided to get married.
It was literally the third day. We agreed, this is it. And we started telling our friends we were engaged and we were getting married.
We hadn't even seen a picture of the other one yet. My first impression was that I knew her. There was one story that Nancy told me, and that was all I needed to hear.
I told him this story that I had been getting on a bus in Boulder, and I noticed a young black woman who was standing in line, and I noticed her because in Boulder I had seen only Caucasian people, and it didn't seem like a very mixed community, and I thought, oh, there's one person, and I kind of smiled at her. And as we got on the bus, she said to me, oh, I like your bracelet. And I said, oh, thanks, yeah, I just got it. She said, I'm looking for a bracelet like that. I said, oh, really? Well, I'll give you this one. And she said, oh, no, I couldn't. I said, that's okay, it didn't cost much. And she said, well, could I buy it from you? And I said, well, what do you think would be more cool? To buy a bracelet from a total stranger or to receive a bracelet as a gift from a total stranger? So she said maybe a gift would be more cool, so I gave her the bracelet. As we were getting off the bus at the end of the ride, we were in Denver, she handed me a little folded piece of paper, and I unfolded it later. It was like a little school note all folded together. And the note said, Dear Miss, today I went out into the world without the protection of my parents for the first time. I took this trip so I could see what the world would be like, because soon I'll be going away to college. Thank you for being the first person I was to meet. God bless. Signed, A. Stranger.
So I heard that story, and I think I knew all I needed to know about Nancy at that point. I think the first phone conversation we had, because I think the next time I talked to Nancy, I think the first thing I said is, are you real?
I remember exactly when I knew, because it felt almost like something fell into place for me, and I could almost physically feel it. That felt like, here's a man who's going to treat me with just the right balance of support and freedom, you know, intimacy and autonomy.
Nancy was working in San Antonio, Texas, giving a workshop. So I planned my trip to meet her in San Antonio when she had finished her workshop.
Finally, he knocked on the door, and I stood there for a minute, and I thought, when I open this door, I'm going to see my husband, my partner for the rest of my life. So I took a big breath, and I opened the door, and there he stood, and he was wearing shorts and red tennis shoes and a baseball cap and a backpack, and he looked like a big Boy Scout, and he was standing there absolutely frozen in space. He was just there, and I'm like, there you are. But I had to kind of grab him by his backpack straps and pull him into the room, which I did. And I didn't resist. He didn't resist.
I was like a deer in the headlights at Nancy's smile. We spent a couple of days in San Antonio and then went on to St. Louis, where we met her kids and a bunch of her friends. And then we went out and got an engagement ring and got married within 3 months.
So we spent a couple days together. I guess that would qualify as first date. And then when I flew out on September 4th, the date I had originally had a ticket for, by then when I flew out, I actually moved out to California and joined Gary.
Nancy flew out and moved in.
I hadn't seen the house until I moved into it. And I was due to do a bunch of work in New Zealand. And so Gary and I took off to New Zealand together for a month, which he considers our second date.
I was shocked at how frail my father was looking. And Nancy's dad wasn't in much better shape, in fact, maybe a little worse. So we decided rather than waiting to get married, we should just do it while they were still around.
I'm going to give a Thanksgiving dinner for a bunch of my family. We'll just get married the next day.
Because your family will all already be there. My folks can't travel back to the Midwest. So we need to look into, can we webcast it or do something to involve them?
We got Gary's family and some of my family together in Los Angeles at the Kinko's of Beverly Hills, very upscale. We went to the Kinko's in St. Louis, which is Brentwood, Missouri, so we were in Brentwood. First, I gave my mother a rose and said a few words to her because she was right there in the room.
In St. Louis with us.
And then Gary held a rose up to the TV monitor and camera and said a few words to his mother. And his cousin in LA turned around under the TV monitor. She pulled out a real rose and handed it to Gary's mom, who was like, "Oh my God, how did they do that?" She figured it was some really high-tech floral delivery that we had arranged. So she had a rose in her hands, and it was a great wedding.
It's a very nice wedding.
We've been now married over 10 years, and we just get along really well. That I have enormous respect for Gary. And anything new I learn about him, I feel like I could just expand my capacity to love him. There isn't anything about him that isn't encompassed within that love. But I respect who he is so much, his values, the way he is, what a kind person he is. And I feel that he's respecting me in return. And that definitely holds us together.
And also just genuine like. I mean, we're together pretty close to 24 hours a day, and it's barely enough. Her goodness. Nancy's just basic goodness. Before I met her, I heard about a party at her house where everybody wore a sign with their name on it that said, "I'm Nancy's best friend." So you can just imagine what kind of a partner she would be. You know?
Gary's heart, that he is just essentially kind to people, very caring, and the way he treats people is one of the most important things about him for me.
I didn't have any kids until I met Nancy, and then I instantly had an 18 and 22-year-old, and they are now 29 and 33, and they're wonderful. I couldn't ask for better kids.
These are Gary's children too now, even though they have a father who luckily we're friendly with,
Yeah,
and a
he's a nice
stepmother. These are Gary's kids too at this point, and they call him for advice and ideas, and they tell him that they love him, and
They call me for my birthday, and
yeah.
we have a very nice relationship.
Neither one of us tries to prove the other one wrong. Even on a little thing where we remember something differently, it's like, okay, whatever. Why would I want to make him wrong any more than I want to make myself wrong? So any little thing that where there's a difference of opinion, it's just easier to let it go. It feels like the fact that we love each other becomes more important than winning an argument. And I think that has helped us enormously.
I was 52 when I met Nancy, and I had been single for 12 or 14 years or something like that. And although I had wished over those 12 or 14 years that I would meet my Nancy, I don't think I really was ready to until I did. There was a sort of surrender in the process about this is the way it has to be when I meet somebody, or this is this, whatever there was some letting go of that, and I think because of that, I was able to recognize the relationship that we were capable of having. So I like to think of it as I needed every one of those 52 years to be ready for this relationship. Couldn't have happened 6 months earlier.